We are. Take two.
Well, thank you, guys. I learned. I don't know. I didn't know this, but you cannot schedule the Zoom meeting other than on the half in advance. So the first link I sent you, uh, I deleted.
You're coming in a little scratchy to me.
Yeah, your voice audio is a little choppy.
That's a choppy.
See if there's anything I can do about that.
Are you driving through a tunnel?
Are you underwater?
Stan and I will carry on. You can make faces.
Right. No, do about it.
Are you in a submarine? Are you in your underwater submarine lab?
I'm not even on my boat. So.
Do you have one of those super fast computers? Or are you using Cox or Comcast? Maybe that's it.
It is Comcast.
Oh, we're screwed.
Not that either. Okay, it is what it is. It's the only mic I got that's hooked up that'll also do video.
So we'll spend the podcast going, what? What'd you say? Ooh, ah.
That's what old people do. That's what this show's all about.
All right, then we're good to go.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Old and in the Way comedy podcast with Bob and Mark, where we fight ageism one bad joke at a time. Reluctantly, we've learned the hard way that repression and denial oftentimes are not enough to hold back the tides of reality before we get our tickets punched.
Oh my God, I'm already lost.
All right. Our mission is clear, Stan, and compelling. We'll pull the veil back and take a less than serious look at all the real and absurd aspects of growing old. And as we kick off this episode, I'd like to introduce everybody to my partner, Bob Heyman, and our guest, Stan Sinberg, who is an author, playwright, award-winning columnist, radio personality for KFOG in San Francisco, a writer-contributor to Mad Magazine, teaches humor and essay classes and is a humor consultant. And George Santos wrote this resume, which gets us off into the direction of our topics today, which is humor in a post-truth era and comedy in the age of conspiracies. So my question to you, Stan, is can comedy save us in the post-truth era? It may have to.
Comedy save us. Oh my God. You have any softball questions? You have like any warm-up questions you can start with?
Well, I'm thinking, who do we listen to? I think when the smartphone came out and Trump came down the escalator in 2015, everything went off the rails. And the internet's only been an accelerant for all the absurd stupidity and conspiracies.
Well, yeah. It's also interesting is this just as a throw in that everybody remembers Trump coming down the escalator. Like that's the most effective launch of the campaign probably ever. Everybody remembers that. Otherwise, if he just walked in through a door, who would remember that? But everybody just remembers that image of him, coming down an escalator. It's not germane to your question, but it's just fascinating to me.
But from that elevator, he launched all these absurd conspiracies about Mexico, Mexicans, they're not sending their best people. And I think we were off and running.
A way of stating the question is, you look at what's on and you say that you couldn't make this shit up.
Well, I mean, I guess we're going to talk about, you said about conspiracies in a post-truth era. I have plenty to say about that, but that wasn't Mark's question, so I want to get back to his question.
Well, let you take the lead right now. What do you want to say about conspiracies? Because I think Trump, when he offered the whole birther thing, a lot of people went, wow, this works. Maybe this is what we should be doing. Just spewing garbage.
Well, the one thing that you left out of your introduction of my my history is in the bottom screen there on the left, on my left, you have the Weekly World News, the world's only reliable newspaper. And I wrote hundreds of stories for them under different nom de plumes because if I ever wanted to have a legitimate uh, job, I I didn't want my byline on any of those stories. But what Bob just said, you couldn't make this shit up. That was literally the job, trying to think about what's the craziest shit I could make up and put it into and write it as a an actual news story. And this was back in well, the Weekly World News has been around since 1980s. I started writing for them maybe around 2002. I think it ended up closing or shutting down for good around 2008. But in those years, you would write all these crazy conspiracy stories, uh, like the real reason.
So it's all your fault?
No, well, actually, I was going to say, the weekly. Let me give you a couple of examples of the stories first. There was one I wrote that Donald. This is during the Iraq War. Donald Rumsfeld changes his name to Rumsfeld Stiltskin and dares rogue nations, guess my new name or we'll bomb you. We had one about the real reason for global warming is that teenage space aliens are coming to Earth and stealing our glaciers for party ice. Um, George Bush walks around the White House wearing a crown so he'll feel smart. Um, are those stories any crazier than Jewish space lasers from Jewish space lasers or Italian satellites stealing elections, stealing votes from to change the election,
Go Chavez.
Or Hillary Clinton is engaged in a Pizzagate thing where they're involved with child pornography rings and sex rings. I mean, stories that we used to write in the Weekly World News that no one would believe. If you wrote them now, they would be taken as they'd be going around the internet going viral as conspiracy stories that people would believe. So, what was the question?
What is the attraction to this outrageousness that somehow converts itself into people believing it?
What's also interesting is when we wrote those crazy stories in the Weekly World News, we would come up with outrageous headlines, and then we would try to actually construct a backstory, make it a news story where it could possibly be believable. It could possibly had an internal logic to it. It was crazy. It was off the wall, but there was an internal logic to the story. So maybe in 1 out of a million chances it could be true. With today's conspiracy theories online, there is no backstory. You just put down this Jewish Jewish lasers stealing votes, and there's no who did it, how was it done, or with the baby eating thing with people telling you that Joe Biden eats babies. Where are the mothers? Who are the babies? How many babies? There's no backstory. It's just you put out a crazy headline and it goes viral and people believe it. So again, that wasn't your question, but it's interesting to me that in some ways the Weekly World News had to have more credibility than these conspiracy stories because at least we had to make an internal logic from them. And
you were doing it deliberately, consciously, enough so that you wouldn't use your real name, but there are real people out there in the real world. And somehow this is getting married into some sort of hybrid of our politics.
Yeah, the Weekly World News, I don't exactly know why it went out of business, but it kind of went out of business at the time of the rise of the internet.
It's usually money.
And, because now, I can make a conspiracy theory. I can make a conspiracy theory that the Weekly World News actually was the progenitor of all these conspiracy stories that people believe now, because they used to print crazy stories, and it gave people the idea that we can write anything and people will read it and pass it along. So yeah, people don't ask people also in schools, they don't teach you critical thinking anymore. So people don't really understand like how to ask Allie, you're interrupting my podcast.
Yeah, we'll talk to you about your background. It's another time. In fact, you should definitely check this video out because there are a few moments I don't think you were aware of.
Anyway,
There are some serious butt shots, but
okay.
go ahead.
All right. So what were we talking about? Um,
And also let's talk about comedy in general, because I think political correctness in some sort of context has also gotten out of hand, because all of a sudden we have generations X, Y, and Z. They don't like comedy. It's not politically correct. It's upsetting. It says disturbing things. And I believe that the stand-ups initially were kind of shocked that the audiences were being so judgmental, and now they're fighting back.
I think that's one of Jerry Seinfeld's peeves, isn't it? Like he thinks that comedians can't really do colleges anymore because everybody's too politically sensitive. Um, on the other hand, uh, well, on the other hand, you have comedians, just being talking about sex in the most graphic terms that you couldn't do 20 years ago. Um, there's some topics that have gone like, nothing is out of bounds. I mean, even on a mainstream show like Colbert, yeah, he talks about balls and dicks and stuff like that. And you know, Johnny Carson, it was inconceivable. He could barely say that Lucy was pregnant or something like that when that show aired. So on one hand, there's no boundaries anymore in terms of what you could say is a stand-up, as long maybe, but then if you offend any group, then it's probably more constrained than ever. So it's a weird dualism.
Well, I think it's curious within our politics, because Fox News is all of a sudden attacking Jimmy Kimmel, Jimmy Fallon, Stephen Colbert relentlessly, and they don't really have anything to offer as a counterpoint other than the Greg Gutfeld show. They have a couple Republican comedians on, and it's hard to watch.
It's supposed to be popular. It's supposed to have pretty good ratings. I don't know.
Apparently he's got a huge audience, but Fox News may have a bigger audience than the other cable news networks combined.
Yeah, well, also Colbert, Kimmel, and what's it, Jimmy Fallon, they're all kind of skew liberal. So the liberal audience is probably divided among those three, where Gutfeld, whatever his name is, he just gets, all the remainders who don't want to be subjected to liberal jokes. So
Well, he makes a lot of liberal jokes, and basically his comedic form is being snarky.
yeah. Well, I don't expect it to be. Uh, I don't expect that it's funny. I've never watched it, but it's hard to make fun. I mean, you can make fun of Republicans like Marjorie Taylor Greene, well, a lot of those characters, especially including Trump, because they're so off the wall and what they say is so patently false and idiotic, and you can pick their ideas apart in a minute. It's harder to be funny when you're attacking uh, immigrants who are trying to get over the border. It's harder to make fun of them because they're in dire straits. You're punching down, and what you're saying. What you're saying basically is not valid. Um, Effective satire is effective because it actually makes a good point, and the target is a legitimate target. It's usually someone with more status or more power, or uh, and when you're punching down at which is what the right wing usually does, punching down at people less fortunate themselves, people who are poorer, people who are uh, out of straits or pregnant and have no options. When you start making fun of those people, uh, it's first of all it's cruel. It's not funny, and it's also wrong. It's just not your policy is wrong.
It may have worked for Andrew Dice Clay, but the way it's being used today, the racism and anti-Semitism, I just don't get.
Yeah, I mean, even when Dave Chappelle was on Saturday Night Live, and he said something like he's giving advice to who was he giving advice to?
Will Smith?
He was giving he said somebody had been banned for being anti-Semitic, and he came on and he said, you know, I respect I respect Jews, and then he goes, that's how you buy yourself some time. Do you remember that? In other words, somebody had been chastised just recently before that for being anti-Semitic, and Chappelle's basically saying, you know, if you give the Jews some compliments, if you compliment them and say you love the Jews, you don't resent Jews, then you can buy yourself some time, because basically because the media is controlled by Jews. That's what he didn't say, but what he meant. So I don't know. It's you know, but there's all this stuff now with body shaming and fat shaming, and you can't say anything about you know, yeah, there's a lot of oversensitivity.
You can't upset the white culture in the South by bringing up true examples of history.
Yeah,
they don't want to talk about slavery. They don't want to talk about the real past. So all of a sudden we're cleansing history.
That's right. Yeah.
Bob, thoughts?
So it's hard. Yeah. So it's hard to make fun of that. I mean, you can make fun of them. You can make fun of them doing those policies that you said, because that's legitimate, and you're punching up at the people who are trying to you know, enforce to cleanse history. Those are legitimate targets.
Do you think that if Trump were to go away, God willing, that we would be back to a world with comedy? I mean, it's easy enough to make fun of Kevin McCarthy and probably Ron DeSantis. I mean, is Trump equally an antidote in humor?
Okay, this is where I go. What did you understand that, Mark? Actually, you were very choppy.
Is Trump an antidote to humor?
Well,
he's so outrageous that it's always like you can't make this shit up. But
yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, every time you think that Trump couldn't be crazier, yeah, he is crazier. And on the other hand, you know, he comedians have been having a field day with him for 6 years now. He's a good target, you know, because he's so ludicrous. But yes, it would be hard to come up with crazier stuff than the stuff he comes up with. It's like what we were talking about before with conspiracy theories. You know, some of the theories that he's been shooting around the internet about how he lost the election and where these votes are coming from, and the FBI is involved and the CIA is involved. I mean, it's so crazy.
But they were actually listening to QAnon conspiracies and entertaining them, and occasionally going on TV with just some crazy ass batshit.
Right. But in his dark days, it used to be said of him that he was kind of fun because he got the joke, or he was, you know, what seems is that
he's supposed to be inside on the joke, but that's a long time ago.
He's no longer inside on the joke. He is the joke, and therefore no jokes are funnier than him.
Yeah.
And bleaching your insides, he was dead serious in the moment. The next day, oh, of course it was a joke.
Right.
Okay, so he didn't come down the escalator last month, and apparently, I mean, maybe he is a spent force, because the announcement in Mar-a-Lago is widely considered to be a dud.
Maybe he should have taken an up escalator this time.
Well, he should have gone to New York, you know. But
take an up escalator and you have like a full circle. Okay, last time I came down, this time I'm going up, and maybe it would be symbolic or something, a metaphor.
Taking an America with him.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean he's no longer in on the joke. He certainly is the joke, and I think people are finally starting to catch on. Although, we've been wrong about him so many times, thinking like he can never get out of this one, and we've been wrong time and time again.
I think history will have a field day with him, and there'll be a whole library of books just on his 4 years.
Yeah, he said, I guess when the January 6th, one of the things that came out in the January 6th committee, one of his aides on January 6th said, this is going to destroy your legacy. And he said, I'm not going to have a legacy. If I lose, I don't have a legacy. The only legacy I'll have is winning. And so he said he wasn't concerned about his legacy. He's only concerned about winning.
And if indicted, do you see him going to jail?
Oh, I don't know about that. I think it's I think it's interesting that the reason he's losing his he seems to be losing his following is not because he's done something more outrageous. There's really nothing more outrageous than January 6th. He didn't really lose any support then. The new Speaker of the House to be probably Kevin McCarthy, went down 2 weeks after January 6th to kiss his ass. So the only thing that's making them lose his popularity is that he's picking losers in the Senate races. He's picking loser candidates in the House races, and he's causing them to lose power. He's the reason that the Republicans didn't win the Senate this time, and that they have such a small majority. So they get so sick of losing because of him, especially Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell hates Trump because of that he's not majority leader now. So that's why he's losing influence, because they suddenly realize maybe we're not riding a winning horse.
So Stan, you went around before the election, and you were selling your buttons.
Yeah.
In the battleground states. Did you have an inkling that he was losing juice?
No. Well, in the midterms, he wasn't the main candidate, so it was mostly I was going for Fetterman against Oz. No, Fetterman against Fetterman was against Oz, right? Yeah.
It was Oz,
and then
those were his guys that lost, like Oz and in Arizona and
Kerry Lake.
Yeah.
I think the only person who prevailed was J.D. Vance in Ohio, but pretty much all his picks lost.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm saying that's why he started losing popularity with the GOP. That's when his influence started to wane, because
yet today he came out and had deflected from that and said that wasn't why they lost. What a surprise!
Has there ever been a thing that's his fault? No. I think he once said, if GOP wins, I get all the credit, and if they lose, I don't take any of the blame. I think that's paraphrasing, but I think that's what he said recently.
Well, have you heard the conspiracy theory that his wife, ex-wife, that he buried in Bedminster?
That what?
Ivana is buried in one of his golf courses as a tax write-off.
Oh yeah.
But did you know that she didn't like golf? That's my joke. In fact, Kirsten was the one who came up with it, so that's my source.
Yeah, I mean, there's no, even something like George Santos. I mean, how do you make somebody like that up? Candidates who can't candidate who cannot, opposite of George Washington, candidate says, I cannot tell the truth. I mean, that's actually, I think I wrote a story about that one time for Weekly World News about a politician who could not tell the truth. And then sure
Now
enough,
it's manifested itself into reality.
right. That's what I'm saying in the beginning, Weekly World News stories, you would say, who could possibly believe these stories? And then years later, it's like, here they are.
Yeah.
That's happened several times. Um,
Santos is said to be very upset that his wife Barbara Walters died.
That
yeah.
on 911.
I mean, I had, this is back in 2020, but I had a young guy come up to me when I was going around with, well, we didn't talk about me selling political buttons, but I made political buttons with the roving anti-Trump bandwagon, and I would go to swing states to sell them. And while I was in North Carolina, no, North Carolina in 2020, I had a young guy come up to me and go, well, what about Biden eating babies? And how do you possibly even answer that? And that is, I just said, Biden doesn't eat babies. He goes, oh yeah, I have videos. You want to see the video?
Wow.
So how do you, yeah. And I had people after the 2020 election, but before the inauguration, swear to me that Trump was going to be inaugurated on January 20th. They couldn't be more positive. If you wrote like a story about Pizzagate with a sex ring in the basement, people now would believe it if people do believe it, but it could have fit in the Weekly World News years and years ago as just the most outrageous thing you could think of.
So do the social media companies have any responsibility? They seem to created a world where this not only exists, it persists, and Congress likes their lobbyists so much they don't really want to rein them in.
Yeah, well, there's just free speech issues, and there's all sorts of issues with that. I mean, you really don't want the government to be in charge of who can say stuff. Although, when you have somebody like what's his name, Alex Jones, those people should not be given airtime. No, because all they're doing is there's a line, I guess. There's probably a different line for everybody. That's the problem. Who do you censor? Who do you not allow to be on the airwaves?
I think it's a moving target that we continue to revisit every time something happens, and hopefully a more enlightened perspective prevails.
Yeah. You asked before about about the sensitivity with comedians and audiences, and I don't work in college. I don't perform at college campuses, so I don't really know if that's true. I mean, people say it's true, and certain comedians get axed or banned from, but I don't know how widespread that is. It's I mean, there's always people who are going to say who are going to be upset about anything, and of course, part of the effective comedy is supposed to offend and offend some people because it's supposed to have an impact. It's supposed to make a point that maybe changes people's perspective. That's why it's funny, because people look at things one way, and then the comedian has a different take on it, and then you start to think, oh yeah, well maybe that's a different. I mean, that's what I used to do when I was a humor columnist. I would write humor because I thought, well, that's the way you don't change people's minds just by giving your point of view. You have to be a little bit more subversive, and the way to be subversive is you say something that makes them laugh at something, and then they go, oh, well, that made me laugh, and maybe there was some truth in that, even though it's not a point of view that I originally aspire to, originally take to. But you kind of get under their skin a little bit by making them laugh at something that maybe they would normally hold to be true. And that's maybe how you affect a little bit of change. I don't know how much this is another little tangent on that, but we talked about how Colbert, Kimmel, uh, and to a lesser degree, Jimmy Fallon get very political. I mean, Colbert's very political, and Kimmel knocks down Trump almost every night. It's hard to know how much effect they really have on the election or on change or on young people's votes. I mean, Jon Stewart was lambasting Trump all the time. Back in 2016, they were pillaring him, but Trump still got elected. So it's hard to know how much effect those comedians have and satirists have. We try, but
Well, I find them very reassuring, and I tape Kimmel and Colbert all their shows just to watch the opening monologue and if they have a musical guest.
Right, but we agree. We for the most part we agree with their perspective. The one thing that maybe it does is maybe it gives when everybody's laughing at Kimmel, when everybody's laughing at Colbert, and the young people, maybe it gives young people a sense of makes them more comfortable or more feeling like they have company in their views. Like it's okay. It's not cool to be racist. It's not cool to be anti-choice. It's not cool to like people like Margaret. Marjorie Taylor Greene. These are targets that we can laugh about and be against, and it's safe because we're in a community where everybody's laughing about them.
Stan, I've got one last question for you. Do you believe in any conspiracy theories?
Well, I believe in any
or do you think our government is batting 1,000?
It's a deep state.
My prediction is that Herschel Walker and George Santos are going to start a third party called the Prevaricator's Party, and they're going to run on the slogan, something that truth is stranger than fiction, and since we do fiction, we're less strange than the truth tellers. So we're something like that. I haven't formulated it exactly, but it's a policy for people who just lie about their backgrounds. Herschel Walker and George Santos are the two main progenitors of it now. And then
don't leave out Mike Lindell.
Mike, well, he's a conspiracy.
He can sponsor them.
Yeah, he would sponsor them, right? The pillow guy.
He'll donate. He'll fund the party.
Yeah, he'll fund it. And then, election deniers can join it, but it'll be just a party of people who can't tell the truth. And you heard it here first.
Thank you, Stan. Bob, do you have any conspiracies you want to throw in the mix?
No, just it'll be we will never tell you the truth party. But the logo can be a big picture of Jimmy Carter with like X stamps, or like we'll never lie to you, we'll never tell you the truth. I like it, Stan. I think there is a post-Trump for you.
The truth is a lie. That's the
yes. There you go.
And on that note,
don't believe.
Dan, thank you, Mark. Thank you, Dan.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.